Welcome back. This week we have a guest, Tara Vellella, who's known as the Toddler Tamer. Tara is a behavioral analyst, a toddler parent coach, and a mom to 3 little ones. She has over 13 years experience working with young children and their families across the world, in schools, in homes, and out in the community. When she had her second child, she realized that there was a huge gap between what she knew as a behavioral analyst and what her friends with little ones knew. She is on a mission to spread the word and show toddler parents how to integrate some simple tips and tricks into their home so that they can reclaim patience and rebrand the not so terrible twos. I am so excited to go into this conversation as we're going to explore a little bit about toddler world, about her work as a parent coach, and how we can have some strategies around finding balance as a parent and still really being that parent that we really dream of showing up as for our little ones. Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Tara, I am so excited to have you on the podcast today and for us to dive into the toddler talk because so many of us struggle with the toddler talk. It's interesting because I have 3 little ones. And I think my husband and I thought with the first, we're like, wow, the terrible threes, this wasn't bad. This was pretty easy.
Right.
And then the middle child came and it was like, okay, this is pretty easy. But then she had I think she had the delayed toddler tantrums that happened at 4. And we were like, what happened? We're 2 kids in and we haven't seen this. And then my third was he was pretty easy peasy. And now he's 4, almost 5. And every now and then he's just like, you know what? I think I'm going to choose not to listen today. And I was like, oh, are we going to talk about this then? It's very different than what my middle child was where I was like, what possessed you today? So I'm so excited.
True. I also have 3 and, I always joke my second, we from 1.5, I was like, well, he's a middle child. It's already in his blood. So this is great. He has to be a middle child to align with that. But, each child is so different. And that's, a part of kind of what makes parenting so difficult too, is you can be ready for one thing and then you think that you have it under your belt and then it changes with the next kid or the next stage or the next milestone that they're hitting too. So there's a lot of different factors. Or if you move or family events, and then it might trigger and change their behaviors in a whole new way that you haven't seen before out of that one child. So it's really a fascinating journey, shall we?
So what you're telling me is that just because they share genetics, they don't actually share the same personality.
Right? No, usually not.
That would be so simple.
Genetics and home environment, and they're still different.
So how about you tell us a little bit about the work that you do, who you are, and what kind of brought you into wanting to work with toddlers and giving parents these tools so they can really thrive
absolutely.
The toddler years. Because the toddler years, they can be a lot, but they can also be so fun. Even though I joke that my middle child was possessed at times, to see her now at 8 years old and to feel like she's so empowered in who she is. I have little fear with her because she can really articulate what it is and who she is. And there's no budging that sometimes, which, it's beautiful and also very scary at times. But I love that there is this gift with working with toddlers and moving through it, but it can be a whole nother ballgame for moms.
Yeah.
Especially if you are the primary caregiver, and especially with how society has set us up, that there's this expectation that somehow we should magically know how to do all of this, and that, we should be joyful and happy doing it, and that it should just be simple. And it's
Right.
exhausting.
It is. It really is exhausting. And, I started out, my background is in behavior analysis. So working really kind of textbook almost with families and kids in schools. I had quite a few kids who would come to our agencies who were older, maybe older elementary, middle schools, and almost being like, I was kind of the last resort for the school districts when they'd be on the edge of kicking a child out. They have to like pull from all their resources. So I would be that one to step in. And after working with these families, like in homes and in schools, and then I stepped aside, and then I had my own kids and started to struggle with like that postpartum anxiety, because I had two kids, two under two, they're 18 months apart, and it was really tough. And was realizing how many of my friends were struggling with this too, the same age, and when you're working in schools and with families and you don't have kids of your own, you have a different approach, how you're approaching families, with that are having kids. A lot of them were have diagnosis, and that's why how they were receiving behavioral services. But so as a parent, as I was stepping through this and realizing all this knowledge that I have and that I know can actually support not just kids that have a diagnosis. This is stuff that can really support and benefit all parents. And why isn't that something that's talked about more? Why aren't we looking at how to build those connections and why that's important and how that's going to help their kid in listening? Why aren't we talking about these other ways to parent that are effective and long-term and not just a script? It's really getting to the root of motivating that behavior that you want to see in a positive way. I'm going to use the example. I don't want to offend anyone. I thought it can be much like training a dog, where you're using those positive, it's behavioral, it's animal science. Like we're animals. And so it's using our, those functions and putting that positive spin on it. We're wanting to do it in the same way. We're treating everybody with respect, and it's not just a blanket script. And so I really, came together in this work with parent coaching, wanting to empower parents with that knowledge so that they can move forward and have a more successful time. And, starting out in toddlerhood, I think is really important, because that's when we really start to see like that struggle for parents. They start out with their babies and they're so sweet and they have opinions, but they're not as forward about it. They're not walking, so you start to move into the toddler years, and then all of a sudden, like these things start popping up, and parents are like, whoa, what what just happened? Like yesterday was holding my baby who was just learning how to crawl, and now they're climbing on top of the chairs and trying to get into the counter, and they're screaming at me and throwing things at me. What do I do? So giving those foundational pieces to toddler parents and then allowing them to use those tools and strategies, you can use the same thing as they get older. You just like to have those pieces and to empower parents from the get-go, and then using them throughout as your child gets older into preschool, elementary. I have a 6 and almost 8-year-old still using those same kind of strategies. Of course, wording is a little bit different when I'm talking to them. And they have a lot more choices and autonomy than when I'm using it with my 2-year-old, but it can be used throughout your life. I mean, I can do it with my husband. Like it's the same thing. You're talking, using motivation, you're getting people to want to do the right thing, kind of like, and it's so, I find it fascinating. I mean, I went to school for it, so I could talk about it all day.
No, but I think there's so many things that you hit on there. Like one that you really hit on that I'm just going to circle back to was the fact that you were doing this work before you had kids.
Mhm.
And then it looked very different once you had kids. And I think that it's so important for so many people to hear that, because I think like once we're in the depths of it, we understand that we can't escape it, right? Like there's something about like when you're helping somebody, but then you get to leave, you forget that they don't get to just leave, right? And sometimes when we as parents rely on these tools, it's like, okay, here's all these great tools, and we put them in and then they work, but then they start to fail an hour or 2 hours later. And then we try to do it again and we don't, we feel defeated. And I don't know about you, but I know for myself and my personality that when I've tried something and it's not working, but it's said that it's supposed to work, then I just become that much harder on myself, right? And this, I think, is so deep for so many women is that we want to do it perfectly. We want to know that we were the perfect mom, the good mom. We did the right thing. And then when we lose our crap or things go south.
Everybody, not just
Yeah.
I do too every once in a while.
And then it just feels like you fail as a parent. And then you take that emotional bat out and you start beating yourself. And I think there's something so beautiful and poetic about, parenting educators or these helpers that are coming in to give us resources, but that also get that, at 5 o'clock, it doesn't end.
Right. Exactly. And that's, definitely a tool that I provide my parents with, my families that come in. It is that level of ensuring that they are getting that self-care there too, because that's going to help reduce that guilt when you're able to then show up for yourself and say, okay, I know that this didn't work, and then holding them accountable and ensuring that they have that support in place to show up and to try again so that they can be consistent with that strategy so it is successful. That isn't always like the first thing. So many people want the quick fix. And with parenting, that does not exist. Not that I know of. I haven't found it yet. Maybe it does. But from my experience, there's not a quick fix. And so many moms, especially, so many women have that level of guilt and that feeling of defeat after it doesn't work that one time and say, well, I tried it. I tried everything. My kid just is broken. I can't do it. I feel guilty. It's my fault. But it's that consistency and needing that extra level, that extra layer of that hand holding to kind of work through those things and that self-care so that you can come back and try that again.
And I'm curious what your take is on this. And if maybe you've been taught this, or maybe that this is something that you've witnessed and seen and created your own theory around. But do you see that when that defeat kicks in, that I don't want to say it's easier, but it's easier for men just to be to disassociate and walk away, where women, we get defeated, we get angry, we feel like we failed, and then we go back again, but we keep doing it, but we don't allow ourselves to walk away or to do the self-care or to rest. Like women are so rest deprived, I think sometimes, because I don't want to say that we're overachievers compared to men, but when it comes to these things about home life, it's like we are relentless not to fail at it. And we just burn ourselves out.
Yes.
At least I do. I'm speaking from my own personal self. I don't know if that's the trend, but that's what I do.
Yeah, no, I completely relate. Often my husband will step in and say, okay, like remind me to do the thing, and so I've gotten actually into the habit of scheduling it now into my calendar where, okay, I'm going to go for a walk between this time and this time. And having that habit of actually having it in as my schedule where it pops up and reminds me that that's the thing I need to do, in that even if it feels like I should not be doing that in the moment, it's still so important to do that, and that can look like so many different things. Sometimes it can even be in the car driving. If you're just driving, you've got the kids in the back, you've done listening to that situation in the back, and you just want to listen to a podcast as you're, and tuning that out. And I think you're absolutely right. Like I do find that men and like the families that I work with, the dads are much quicker to know what they want and then like, well, I got to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Whereas moms might need that extra reminder they might need to physically remind themselves, with a calendar pop up or whatever to have that set in place for them.
I think it's very easy, and not because this is a fault of women, but I think this is like just how we've been trained and how our society kind of sets us up, is that we do become a little bit of that martyr syndrome of that we
Right.
want to be it all, but then we refuse to take care of ourselves and then we get burnt out and we just keep doing the cycle that breaks us more and more and more,
Mm-hmm.
where as much as we might get frustrated at the men in our lives, we're just being able to walk away peacefully and be like, I'm
Right.
done with this. And I know for myself, I'm always like, we can't be done with it. Like, we've got these little people. But it's so true when he's just like, you know what? Let's just step away for a moment. Like, no one's going to die in this situation from you
Right.
going to just take a moment, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it will be here when it gets back, right? So,
Right. And that's, one of the things that I encourage parents to do too is like, if you're feeling like you're in that moment with your toddlers and they're just screaming like this happens to me often. I have a child who loves to just be on my leg in my arms at all times. So reminding myself, that is okay. That's normal. And I'm going to take a moment behind this closed door for 2 minutes to recenter, and then I can come back out. Like we'll be okay. And that's what I need in that moment. And encouraging parents to do that, because that's how we are going to be able to better support our toddlers and our family as well.
mhm, mhm. What is what is some of your favorite tips or tools that you suggest, even if it's just one or two of them, of like your like immediate go-to for these toddler years, for the neediness, the clinginess, the temper
Right.
tantrums, like the overwhelmment that us women often feel?
Yeah.
What is like your key that like this, we're going to start here as like the ground base, and then from there we're going to build our skills, but we've got to start here to nurture ourselves. What would you recommend for women?
The first, I always start out with connection, and ensuring that throughout the day there is intentional connection with your toddler. Um, that is not, it doesn't include when your child is throwing a tantrum and you're with them trying to calm them down. That is not intentional connection. Um, this is more when your child is calm and they're kind of, when they invite you to play, to get down and to play with them, to get down at their level, for 10, 15 minutes at a time. Even once a day, I find can be so helpful and impactful for the little people as well as for the parents, because it reminds mom or dad why, how much fun they are, how much fun their little one is. And it provides that level of support, and your child knowing that you're there and you're showing up and you're being reliable, having your phone away. This is another thing that I have families do, where they can schedule it into their day if they're finding it really hard to do and they just have so much on their plate, because we are very busy and we have all the things and all the alerts going off. So scheduling out, 15 minutes, and it could even be in the bathtub, take advantage of like bathtub instead of being on your phone next to your child, supervising them in the bath. If they're really having fun with the bubbles, getting in there and like finding some cups and you can pour water back and forth together. But just finding those moments to like embed throughout your day where you can have those intentional connecting parts. And I find that really helps with not only your toddler listening, they're going to want to listen to you more because you're more of a playmate versus always telling them what to do. It also helps with parents' view of their child, which is also super important. Like getting back to remembering, like, oh, that was so cute how they did this, and this, versus, oh, they just yelled at me all day and needed me to hold them, and it was impossible to get anything done. So really tuning back to the basics is like my ground number one first step.
Mm-hmm. I think I think that is sometimes so hard as
Mm-hmm.
busy women,
Yes.
is to remember that little component of connection. And I think because we are juggling so many balls in the air
Mm-hmm.
and we are trying to be everything to everyone, and we're I think it's sometimes overscheduling ourselves with things that are not necessarily going to be the big impactors that are going to have the
Right.
lasting effects. That sometimes it's like, well, I could make these homemade muffins and freeze them for the next month because it's going to make my life easier versus being like, you know what, I could just pause for a minute and get on the floor for 10 minutes and do something that will calm both of us down, right? Versus being so center focused that I have to get this done or I promised I'd get this done, and being able to give yourself permission of going, nope, this isn't where the priority is. And I think that can be so hard for us because we're trying to multitask, which doesn't necessarily work with toddlers.
Right. No, they I feel like they have a sense about multitasking. They're like, oh, mom is trying to do three things. I'm not going to let her do that right now. Um, they have a sixth sense for it. And that's the moment where they choose to,
Yep.
to act out because they know there's a couple other things happening at the same time, and that's not okay with them. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I was reading in a book just recently called Fair Play, and she was talking about how our brains are actually not built to be able to multitask. Like we're actually doing damage to our brains by trying to multitask. So maybe our toddlers are our wellness keepers. And they're reminding us that we're doing damage by trying to do so many things. So let's just not do them all and let's just play with me.
Exactly. Just play with me. And that's, so many times like what they want. And of course not always. But a lot of times, there can be quite a bit of benefit from just stepping back and from enjoying that time with your toddler. And yeah, it can be very overwhelming, but fun at the same time, and I really encourage parents and women to take the lead, or to allow your child to take the lead in those moments too. So if you are getting down on the floor with them and you're playing with them, not telling your child how to play, because your child, I promise you, knows how to play. It might not look like how you think it should look or how it is supposed to be. They may not be building a Lego house with Duplos. Maybe they're taking those pieces and combining a couple different, the farm animals with them or the magnetiles. And it may not make sense, but allowing them that autonomy too is super important in those moments, because you're showing them that you trust them in the process. And that builds, their level of ability to play independently, which can be a wonderful tool for moms that have all the things going on in their lives to have. Because if you're constantly telling your child how to play, that's going to not help them in developing their independent play, because they don't know how to play without you. So giving them back that control of their play and their environment can be a really great tool as well in that.
Mm-hmm. That makes complete sense. And I don't think I did that very well. It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay. They're good now.
I know for myself with 3 kids, especially when there was 2 and I was pregnant with a third, like that was hard, of having a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old and being pregnant and due any day. And it was exhausting. That one thing that I found really helpful for me was knowing that play doesn't have to take the social media view of play or the conventional, like what we see in textbooks or what we might find at the library. For me, like crafts were such a trigger. Like it just steam might be coming out my ears. Like I was just like, that was not the thing for me to do.
Glue all over the table.
Yeah. So like I found like when I was getting burnt out or when I was getting exhausted and when I just didn't have to give any more of me to them, that one thing I think I learned that really helped me was thinking outside the box to meet my needs, but yet also entertain them. So like we have one dog that loves to jump up and bite bubbles. So, and they thought it was hilarious. So like those moments that I was really burnt out, it was like, just bring out the bubble machine and just blow bubbles, because now the dog's jumping at them, they're laughing, like everyone's content, and it's very little effort upon me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also giving myself permission to feel like it was okay to fail at what momming should look like, I guess, sometimes, of like, that I should want to get on the floor and play Barbies with them. And I should want to, read a story with multiple voices. Like, that's what a good mom would do. And, the craft thing, like the craft thing is still like a sore point in my side. So, because I'm still not that mom that can do crafts. I just cannot. But, the other part of it too was like, finding my cousin gave me this suggestion, because she had two boys that were really rambunctious, and she was like, when you're tired, just find a way for you to rest while they do something to you. Like, she's like, we play doctor all the time, where I just lay on the floor and they bandage me up and we go through boxes of Band-Aids. But you know what? It's easy, right? And so, like, I think sometimes as parents, I know for myself, like, it was like, I wanted to be that mom that would bake cookies with my kids, and that wanted to, I don't know, do these beautiful crafts that were handmade gifts for grandma at Christmas. And none of that ever happened. Like, to this day, even though my daughters are now older, to bake with them creates a little bit of anxiety in me. So I just give myself permission that there's things that I'm not built to do, that there's other people in their life that will do those things with them, like the school or their grandmother or their father. Right. But I think as women, sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to know, or to not be like good at everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with social media now, I mean, it's impossible. I mean, I'm the same way. Like, I wanted to be that parent who has all these beautiful, I'm very inspired by Reggio Emilia's work. And I'm like, I wanted to be that parent who has all the like beautiful loose parts and gems, and they can just play with no, I don't want little pieces all over my house. That's a trigger. That's not going to be something that we do. So I completely agree. Definitely a struggle for me is food and food prep, and always constantly reminding myself, like, you know what? We had macaroni and cheese and frozen broccoli, and that's beautiful. Like, we did the thing. That's what keeps everybody happy. Everybody was fed today, and I did not have that beautiful meal that maybe in my mind I really wanted to create with my children for the day. But they're still happy. And I think that's what it also comes down to, is them being happy, right? And it might not look how you think it should look, but if they're happy and they're content with what's happening, what's going on, it's a job well done.
I think that's beautiful what you just said, is that if they're happy. And I think that's sometimes what we forget, is that we try to be this imaged mother, this mother that, we see posted everywhere.
They don't see.
Yeah. And just happy.
Right.
And if we can remind ourselves of that, I think we would be happier as well. Are you on a fertility journey right now, trying to conceive a baby and just feeling like you're at the end of the rope of hope, that this is never going to happen, or that your body is broken, or that you just don't know how to manifest this deep desire that you're yearning for to become a mother? Well, I'm offering a workshop called Moving the Needle from Broken to Fertile. In this workshop, we're going to explore how we can move to a place of hope, how we can connect to our body to heal, and how we can learn how to trust our body again so that we can create this fertile experience in our body. I am somebody who went from feeling very broken to healing my body when doctors said it was impossible, to now having a beautiful family with 3 children. I'm here to take you on this journey to reclaim hope and to really find the tools to help you trust your body to move into conception and bring this baby that you're deeply desiring earthside. So come join me on March 18th at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time for this free workshop called Moving the Needle from Broken to Fertile. The link to join is in the bio below. Now, I know that you deal a lot with children who have behavioral issues or have been diagnosed, or that parents that are really struggling with the toddler years, the temper tantrum years. What is something that you would say to those moms out there that are moving through these diagnoses? Because they are hard, and they are becoming more and more prevalent, I want to say, like more awareness around it. And maybe this is because we have a better assessment now than what we had 30 years ago, 40 years ago. But I know I have so many girlfriends that they are juggling it. And I look at them and I'm just like, you're doing a good job. Like you just need to know you're doing a good job, because it can feel like a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And, I think the biggest thing that I tell parents that I want everybody to know who's working through it is that they are doing a good job, and to find a community. And I think for all parents, it's super important, but especially when you're feeling maybe like you're the only one going through this, that it's a really tough time for your family. You're not the only one. And finding that community of other families that are going through it. This could be in person. I mean, it could be online. It can be a Facebook group. But finding that support and being open to that is really important, because that's where you're going to be able to grow and to find strategies that align with you and how you want to move through it and walk through it, and and relying on having a network that you can rely on, and not being afraid to ask for help within that group as well.
And I think that's one thing we struggle with a lot for women, for whether we're a parent or it's women's health, or whether it's anything when it comes to us as we are growing and developing in our ages and our years, is that before there was a community, women were never meant to do this all on their own. There was no such thing as you going to your home to isolate, to take care of kids, to cook all these meals, to figure out the strategies on your own, to research every fever and disease, and prepare yourself for every worst case scenario that might happen. And that's what we're doing. Like before there was community kitchens, and there was grandparents, and even if there wasn't a grandparent, there was somebody in the community. We were never meant to do this alone. And modern world has really put us in this box of feeling like we're failing or that we're struggling all the time.
And then
we can't.
Exactly. And then you have so many families who might, moms might feel embarrassed about taking their kid out too, because what if someone sees my kid hitting me? What are they going to think? How are they going to judge me? And they place these what ifs, but it's not making them happy or their child to be in the home all day. And you can only do that for so long. So, making sure that you have that built-in kind of community to provide you with that confidence as well, so that you can go to the playground. You can have a play date with a friend, even if it's in half conversation and half chasing after your child. But you're confident enough that your friend understands and that people around you understand that that's what it looks like right now in this season.
Yeah. Yes, this season. That's so beautifully put. Yes. And I think, and maybe you can comment a little bit more on this, of where can women find community? Because I think so often this is another problem of the modern world, is we've moved away from our families. Like we've moved a distance away from our mothers or our in-laws. And so then, like for myself, we have my sister-in-law, but she works a full-time job as a nurse. And so her hours are all over the place. But she's really like the only person that we probably would have called upon, because my family lives 3 hours away, right? And his parents are too old. And so then that was always my excuse. It was like, we have no one to help me, right? Like, who am I going to leave 3 kids with, right? Like, and so community was such a big struggle for me, but yet it was a missing piece. And there is community out there, and it just looks different. It looks different in this modern world.
It really does, and that really touches on me as well. I live on Maui, so I'm very far removed from any friend or any family None of our family lives here, and it's quite a plane ride to get here for any of them. So, here is I've really relied on building a community of friends and good friends. And it's something that's more in the culture out here, at least, because so many people are in the same boat where they are away from family. And so we really do rely on one another as family out here. But prior to being out here, I lived in North Carolina, and I had moved there from California, and I was able to find a support group for newborns. My oldest now, she was like 2 months old when we moved. And so finding, it was like a newborn support group. And there are so many groups out there. I think if just to do a search, there's the MOPS, and there's a bunch of different resource groups that meet in person. On Maui, I know that we have a couple toddler meetup play groups that meet weekly, and just finding kind of your group. And if that's, some of those groups might not be a good fit for everybody. And that's, especially with us being so busy and, working and doing all the things that sometimes a play date feels impossible. I think it could look like finding a Facebook group, honestly, like creating a group, creating that community, going to the playground, and maybe your child is gravitating towards another person, like another little toddler, and finding their parent and talking to them. Yeah. And not being afraid to start up that conversation with people, because sometimes that's where we feel stuck, and I'm guilty as well. Like I identify as an introvert. So that, it can be that struggle. But for me, like that's been the most rewarding, is when you push past that kind of uncomfortable phase of, oh, do I want to talk to, I do, like, I need a friend, but how can I meet? You just have to do it. Just pushing through it, just pushing past that uncomfortable, because the other parent is probably feeling the same way. Mm-hmm. So why not? There's no harm in going for it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are somebody, I don't know how it works in the States, but here in Canada, particularly when there is diagnosis, or you're working with a physician, mm-hmm. and you're working with a team to help you navigate this, is that usually there's always a resource, right? Like you can ask any of those professionals that you're working with, going, I'm feeling really lonely. I'm feeling really isolated. And for us, it's social workers in the hospital, where they'll be like, okay, well, there's this mommy group here that we always host, right? I think there are these resources out there. They're just not really well advertised. Yeah. And so sometimes we have to dig a bit for it. But as women, we're good at digging, because I know for every fever my child has had, I have researched every symptom.
What else can happen? What could this be? It's so true. And I find, like, out here, a lot of the groups are published in like little local magazines, mm-hmm. which, you might not pick up, or you might think, why, but just to like flip through the family magazine that's free at, the grocery store checkout, like sometimes there's some really good resources in there that you might not think of.
So then for moms who are out there now, they're trying to find their community, they're trying to establish more balance, what are some extra little tips or tools that you really recommend, since you've lived through it, we both have lived through it, of managing toddlers and kids, on really, I guess, kind of creating a sense of inner knowing for themselves? I think, or not inner knowing, but like authority of who they are. I think as moms, sometimes we really start to lose our identity. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but I know for myself, when I decided that I wanted to have kids, I like left my career. I was going to become this parent. I had this vision of being stay at home. And then all of a sudden there was this longing of feeling a little lost in who I was, that all of a sudden I was now caring for so many people, which I wanted to. I am so glad that I went down the parenting route. I love my children, but then I was caring for my husband as well. And I was booking all the appointments, and I was doing all these extra things that I kind of lost a little bit of me and who I was. And I know this past year, I literally had to sit with my doctor going, I don't know how to feel joy anymore, right? Like I love who I am. I am loved that I have kids. But what actually brings me joy, what actually brings me pleasure, I don't know. And I don't know how to find that. I don't know how to rediscover that. And so we called it, my husband and I called it that I had to go and seek like joy dates. Like I had to go figure out what was going to bring joy back into my life. And it literally, it may sound funny, but it was like, okay, so I was completely lost. I was like, I don't know how to exist outside of being a parent or running my business or being a wife.
Right.
Because everything that I loved before that, well, I shouldn't say I couldn't do. I felt like I couldn't do. I felt like I couldn't be a rock climber anymore. I felt like I couldn't travel to third world countries and try to save the world anymore because I had
Right.
people here. So what does that leave me when I didn't really know anymore? And I was now 9 years into it, that it was
Mhm.
like 9 years of identifying only as a parent. It really became hard to figure out me again. And so things like I had to go to an escape room. I had to invite friends to go to an escape room. I was like, maybe this will bring me joy.
Right. That's
What else can we try? Like I really had to go outside the box and think of like weird things of like, what could I do that might spark pleasure? And it wasn't because I needed that I was unhappy, but it was because I just didn't know who I was anymore. And that can be really hard for moms, especially if you're dealing with younger children who
Mhm.
need you all the time, or if you have children where you feel like you're the primary that has to be there because of behavioral issues or because of a diagnosis, because you're just so afraid to trust someone else to take care of your little people the way you would take care of them. But then we become so disconnected from who we are. And
Mhm.
I think that's the next issue that so many of us women and so many of us moms really face, is re-identifying of who we are in this next phase of our life outside of being Johnny's mom or
Right. Right.
Tim's wife or yeah.
Well, that's so true. And I think for so many, that's where that community piece can come in to handy, because then finding those friends, rediscovering new friends, maybe who are at that same point, that are also wanting to take that kind of that next step with you in your friendship. Like we're not just here for play dates anymore, but connecting. You've connected, made this connection as a person, person to person, and let's find out together. And I think creating those friendships for women and for moms should really be more of a priority. And maybe it's something, what was modeled for you, if it wasn't like a priority for your mom, that's maybe not something that you just kind of put on the back burner for you. But I think something like building those, like really establishing good friendships between women and between moms helps with that, because that provides another sounding board when you do want to go to an escape room. Like, who are you going to invite? I mean, you could go by yourself, I guess, but having that connection and building out the priority. So maybe you have your calendar date for yourself to go for a beach walk, and then you also need to build in twice a month your friend date. How are you going to cultivate? Is that dinner with the girls? Is that going to, going on a trip? Is it a bigger thing? Is it just a small, let's meet up and chat for coffee on Monday morning after we drop the kids off at school? But cultivating those relationships that that feel good, that aren't just tied to your children, is really important.
And I think it's pretty obvious, and I know the answer, and I'm sure everyone that's listening knows the answer, but we always need to hear from an outside source so that it like re-anchors in there of what we already know. But why is this so important for our kids, for us to have a life outside of them?
Well, it's so important so that we are able to be fulfilled and joyous, and that they can see that. They can see that they have that sort, like your parent has a source, so that when they grow and they get older, that they're able to have that too. And it doesn't rely on having a child. It's not, we don't have to be to be filled. And I don't want to ever, put that on my daughters. Like, well, you have to have kids because look how, but then you're feeling stressed out and then it doesn't look so great. So,
Yeah.
definitely been days where my daughter's like, it's too much work. I'm not having kids. Fantastic. Go
I
on your,
love that kids see that though these days, because I don't think I ever had that thought. I was just like, I'm just going to be a mom because it looks like the greatest thing ever.
right, right.
But literally, my mom was probably losing her mind 95% of the time, right? So
Is that
I
balance and it keeps us, as a better parent. It keeps us grounded as a better partner. It keeps us grounded as a person. Like it's so many important pieces there.
yeah, it really is. I have 3 kids, and my oldest is about to turn 10. And I haven't really left them until just recently when I went to Miami for 6 days. And what I found when I came back, it was such a beautiful aha moment that I didn't really think I was going to have until I was on the plane coming home,
Mhm.
was that it was a reward for all of us. It was a reward because finally I got to sleep in a bed with nobody in it.
Yep.
That has not happened in 10 years. So
Yep.
I didn't have someone sleeping on top of me or waking me up every hour. So it was good for me because it challenged me to trust my husband 100% in doing everything that I did, being able to take care of the daily grind, which I'll be honest, I really was fearful that he was not going to be able to do it. I thought for sure, like, I was going to come home and there was going to be missed school days, or like I prepared for the worst because I had a hard time trusting. I had a hard time. It's been my role for 10 years. And now I'm just leaving without training somebody how to do it. It was really scary, but it was good for me to be able to remove myself and actually have that fear. Like a lot of people are probably like, why was it so fearful? It's because like that's all I've ever done. And now I was completely trusting somebody else. And so it was really good for me to challenge myself to take that time for me, but it also made it so that I missed my kids. Like I came home and the joy and the fun and the talking, like I missed all that. And sometimes we don't give ourselves the opportunity to miss these things when we
Right.
just keep ourselves in it. But
Yeah.
then I also gave my husband the opportunity. The second gift was that he got to see that he could do it, that he was resilient, right? Like the
Right.
thing that all the stuff that he's like, well, you're just better at it, or it's easier, it comes naturally to you. Like he had to build that resiliency, and he felt proud of himself, and it was great. Like when I came home that night, he was like, I did it. I'm like, you did it. Like, let's high five, fist bump, like you did it. Right. And it's so empowering for them to see that they could handle it, right? And
Mhm.
then it was so important for my kids because they got to see daddy in a different light. And I did coach my husband a little bit on this. I'll admit that, of just saying like, break the rules this week, like do things rather than trying to do it my way. As
Yeah.
much as I don't want to say that out loud, don't do it my way. Go and break the rules so that they have these memories of that, daddy did this with us and daddy did that, versus you trying to be me and stressing out and just screaming at them. Like you have to figure out your method while still meeting these criteria of them having vegetables, of them
Right.
getting to school on time, and them having a bedtime. Like
Right. Right.
there's some core ones that you can't bend on, but make memories. And my kids, they had the best time, right? They got to eat out and they went for fancy donuts, and like they did the things that isn't day to day. And so I think there's so much opportunity as women when we take care of ourselves, that we give the gift to the people in our life as well, to have these opportunities that they wouldn't have if we were still there
Yeah.
micromanaging everything, because we're really good at it.
We're really good at it. And I think that's a really great point as well. Like, embedding, and even for those small moments where you're not able to maybe leave, or you're still in it. Like my husband works 12 to 14-hour days. Like he's gone all day. And embedding some, I'll try to, it can be feel outside of what I would normally be doing, but also allowing yourself to have that fun with your kids, where it's okay, well, normally we don't eat out, but like last night my daughter was at practice, and so my son, he's like, well, can we go to this restaurant? I was like, oh, I really wanted to say no, because I'm like, oh, I just got all these groceries, like but giving, okay, why not? And they feel they get so used to you saying no, but then having that extra moment of connection with them and maybe finding that time where you normally say no, but why would you, questioning that, like, why would I say no right now? What would be the worst that could happen? Is this a hard no, or is this a soft no? Like it could change. And I think, giving them the opportunity as well, to do something different every once in a while. And that can be a real game changer for our kids too.
Yeah. And then one thing I want to say, because you've mentioned it, that you're an introvert, and then also mentioning the importance of community. I also identify as an introvert. And so any other introverts out there listening, your challenge is to find an extroverted friend, because they will get you out and they will make you do the things. I definitely tried to seek out a few extroverted friends, because they're the ones that won't cancel last minute. And not to say that canceling last minute is not a bad thing. Sometimes it's needed. But us introverted people, in the 11th hour, we can be like, you know what? Do you really want to do it? Because we can just cancel. We're the extroverted person.
And it would be really nice to just sit on my couch and watch TV and quiet. Like,
we don't need to do this. It's okay. We can do it next week. Yeah. But when you have that extroverted friend, they're like, no, we're going. It's okay. And then you have to put your shoes on and you have to get out of the house. And so I think every introvert needs one extroverted friend in the mix to kind of like rally them all up. They're the engine. So,
or to find like that extrovert. I have one friend I call her the connector. She's an extrovert who kind of knows everybody. It's like, oh, you'd be really good friends with, let me introduce you. She like connects everybody. She's like the center, but it's like, oh, you have kids. She also has kids the same. Yeah, you'd be good. You'd be a good match. We'll set up
exactly.
We'll set you two up.
You definitely need those. Oh, well, this has been so great. And I love how we weaved in like the connection with kids. It can be simple. It can be unique. It can be special, but also such a deep importance around self-care for women. So I guess as we're wrapping this up here, what would be your womb-led tip for moms out there that are dealing with these little people that require so much of them all the time? What would you say to them to help them feel empowered, I guess?
I guess it's kind of a twofold, but one is to get outside, especially when you're feeling like you just need to regulate your body, take your kid for a walk, go to the park, just sit out on a porch, just to be outside and to feel that sun. I find like children, and especially toddlers, can find joy in the simplest things, like the leaves or the grass. They don't need anything fancy. Sticks become, swords or drawing tools or wands. Like they can become so many different things. So just getting outside and then grounding and finding that presence in the moment as well. And again, it doesn't, not very difficult to be present all day long, but in those small, 10-minute intervals throughout the day. I like to challenge parents to do a 10-day challenge where for 10 days they're present for 10 minutes and they have that in their calendar so that they're able to find that. And maybe that time is outside.
Mm-hmm. That is such a great little tip. And it reminds me way back before we had kids, my husband and I had gone to a couples therapist, and because my husband just really didn't understand like what I was needing of, like, I just need to hear that you love me. Like, and he's like, but I do. And it's like, and so I remember the therapist going, you know what, you just need to set an alarm every day at like 5 p.m. to say something nice. Like that's it. Right. But for him, it was like, well, this should just be known. And it was like, but for me, I was like, but I'm feeling empty. I'm feeling like I want to hear it. I need to hear it. Yeah. And so the same kind of goes with this parenting of the 10-minute, like put it in there, because life gets busy and we get stuck in these roles where we feel like we have to do these things. And we sometimes forget the most important, like you said, is connection and memories, right? And it can be really easy to gloss over those and forget them in the busy hustle.
Yeah. And especially when you have this societal expectation of it looking a certain way or feeling a certain way, and it should be fancy and well thought out and well planned. And as a type B person, that never felt aligned for me. So everything is more off the cuff. And, it's super simple because that's a lot of times all that is required.
Mhm. I love that. Oh, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. This was so helpful, and I love talking with you. For anyone that wants to learn more, to seek out the expertise of Tara, and to follow her on Instagram, all of her information is in the show notes below. So go check out her Instagram feed. It's great. I love that you're on there all the time. It's fantastic. You're always popping up. I'm like, yay, there she is again. So
yes, all the juicy tips.
yes, I love it. And one thing I must say that I really appreciate about your feed is that when I look at it, it doesn't make me feel like I'm failing, if that makes sense. Like you can be on a lot of different, I know I'm still signed up for so many different parenting newsletters, but there's something about feeling like I have to still do more, right? Like I still have to achieve more. And there was something so peaceful about seeing yours and just being like, oh, that's how easy it can be.
Exactly. And that's, the big thing. I just love to show parents how simple, like quick tips, quick wins that can be done. And as long as they're consistent with it, you're going to see a big change. You're going to feel better, more at ease, and have those fewer tantrums. So it's really a beautiful thing.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much once again. Friends, have you had a chance to download my new free ebook? Maybe it's not you. The Truth on PMS and How You Can Take Back Control of Your Cycle is now available. This is truly a book that I think needs to be in the hands of every woman who struggles with the second half of their menstrual cycle. So if this is you, click on the link in the show notes and download your free copy today. And remember to subscribe to this podcast and share a review if you loved this episode. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.